somewhere beneath the ancient volcanic skin of an island at the far edge of the known world, sealed inside the darkness for longer than any civilization has kept written record, there is a silence that does not belong to nature. It is too perfect, too deliberate, too old. In the winter of 2006, a geological survey team working in the limestone highlands of New Zealand's South Island lowered a remote sensing probe into what appeared on their instruments to be an ordinary subterranean cavity. They expected to find water, fossil coral perhaps, sediment layered like the pages of a geological textbook. What they found instead caused the lead geologist to stop mid-sentence, set down his instruments, and say nothing for nearly 4 minutes. Not from confusion, from the particular, rare, skin-prickling recognition that something had gone profoundly wrong with everything he thought he understood about this land. The probe's imagery revealed walls, not walls shaped by water, not walls carved by volcanic pressure or the slow, grinding surrender of tectonic plates. Walls, flat, angular, walls that, in the half-second it takes for the human eye to process what it is seeing, communicate one terrifying possibility: that someone was here before anyone was supposed to be here. To understand why this matters, why this single discovery carries the power to quietly dismantle the accepted story of human settlement, you must first understand what New Zealand was supposed to be. The islands now called Aotearoa were among the last habitable places on Earth to be settled by human beings. The Maori, voyaging from East Polynesia in a breathtaking demonstration of oceanic navigation and cultural courage, arrived somewhere between the late 13th and early 14th centuries. They were, according to everything scholarship had long agreed upon, the first. There were no others before them. The land was empty, waiting, pristine. But the edges of the story, the places where the evidence grows quiet, where the geological record whispers instead of speaks, those edges are where history has always hidden its most uncomfortable truths. The Maori oral histories contain repeated references to a people who came before. They are called, in various traditions, Patupaiarehe, fair-skinned beings, sometimes described as tall and pale, who dwelt in the mountains and forests, who retreated as human settlement expanded, and who eventually vanished entirely from the visible world. For generations, European scholars dismissed these accounts as mythology, as the Maori equivalent of fairy stories. But myths do not leave walls underground. The subterranean structure discovered in 2006 was not alone. It was the most dramatic and well-documented example of something that researchers had been quietly noting for years: anomalous cavities, unusual stone formations, passages through limestone that followed lines too straight, too deliberate. The results produced a map that no one was quite prepared for. Interconnected chambers, passages, and at least 3 distinct spaces large enough to qualify as rooms. The results produced a map that no one was quite prepared for. Interconnected chambers, passages, and at least 3 distinct spaces large enough to qualify as rooms. New Zealand's geological isolation is profound. The islands were part of the ancient supercontinent Gondwana before separating roughly 80 million years ago. Whatever created these structures did so in human time, on human scale, with human purpose. The dating of mineral deposits within the chambers suggested that the chambers had been sealed for a period of time that sat uncomfortably far outside the accepted window of Maori settlement. The figures pointed toward a time somewhere between 800 and 1500 years before the arrival of the Polynesian voyagers. This is the era of the Crusades, the era of the Norman conquest of England, an era in which human beings across the globe were writing, building, trading, navigating. And somewhere in that era, on an island at the bottom of the world, someone was underground, building something, and then disappearing so completely that only the silence and the stone remembered them. The deep ocean navigational traditions of Polynesia represent one of the most extraordinary human achievements in the history of migration, a systematic, intentional, multi-generational expansion across the largest ocean on Earth, guided by stars, currents, wind patterns, bird behavior, and the accumulated knowledge of societies for whom the sea was not a boundary, but a road. But they were not the only Pacific navigators. The question of pre-Maori contact with New Zealand has circled the edges of scholarly debate for well over a century. Thor Heyerdahl's Kon-Tiki expedition demonstrated, controversially and spectacularly, that a balsa wood raft could traverse the Pacific from South America to Polynesia. Genetic analysis of the kumara, the sweet potato, a South American plant deeply integrated into pre-European Maori agriculture, confirmed that there was an exchange between the peoples of South America and the peoples of Polynesia. Someone crossed, someone returned, someone brought seeds back across an ocean that most of the world had not yet admitted existed. If contact existed, then the question is not whether someone might have reached New Zealand before the main Maori settlement, but whether the evidence of their presence has simply been waiting, underground, for us to be ready to look. The artifacts recovered from the chambers are few, fragmentary, and maddeningly ambiguous. Stone tools, worked with techniques that do not align neatly with known Polynesian traditions. A fragment of carved bone, its markings analyzed by 3 separate specialists who produced 3 separate and irreconcilable interpretations, one calling the markings decorative, one structural, one linguistic. A dark, dense, fine-grained volcanic stone, shaped into a form that resembles similar objects recovered from sites in coastal Peru and the Marquesas Islands simultaneously, as if whoever made it existed at a cultural crossroads that history has not yet charted. Beneath one of the main chambers, at a depth that required careful excavation through layers of undisturbed sediment, a researcher's brush uncovered a section of floor that had been deliberately leveled, not smoothed by water, not flattened by geological pressure, leveled, the kind of surface you create when you intend to live somewhere or to gather. The kind of surface that speaks without words, of community, of repetition, of a life organized around this particular place over a significant span of time. And then it ended. Whatever civilization or group or community created these spaces, they left, or they were taken by something, disease, climate, conflict, the ordinary catastrophe of a small population attempting to survive at the absolute edge of the navigable world. The chambers were not destroyed. They were not burned or collapsed or deliberately sealed. They were simply abandoned. Left to the slow patience of the stone, left to the calcite drip and the darkness and the silence. The silence that a geologist would one day mistake for 4 very long minutes for the silence of a place no human had ever been. If people arrived here before the accepted date, they arrived without leaving a sufficient trace in the genetic record of the Maori. They are the people the Maori oral traditions already remember, the Patupaiarehe, the fair ones, the mountain people, the ones who came before and then became story. The oral traditions of the Maori are not decoration. They are data. They are the record of a people who understood that in the absence of writing, the spoken chain of memory between generations must be maintained with the same rigor and care. When those traditions speak of people who were already here, who built, who knew this land, who ultimately withdrew into the forest and the mountain and the myth, those traditions deserve to be treated not as folklore to be indulged, but as testimony to be investigated. What the scientists found beneath New Zealand is not, in the end, simply a set of anomalous chambers and ambiguous artifacts. It is a door that opens onto the possibility, unproven, contested, extraordinary, and deeply human, that the story of how our species spread itself across this planet is more complicated, more courageous, and more ancient than the version we have been telling ourselves. History is not a completed document, it is an excavation, and every layer we remove reveals not the bottom, but only the next layer beneath. Somewhere in the limestone highlands, in the cool and lightless chambers that have waited through the rise and fall of empires for a probe to find them, the silence continues. It is patient, it knows something, and slowly, painstakingly, one brush stroke at a time, in the peculiar and magnificent way that truth moves through the world, we are beginning to learn to hear it. The question is not whether we are ready for the answer. The question is whether we are brave enough to keep asking.